Hello, and welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be looking closely at Martyn's Law. That's the official name, the Terrorism Protection of Premises Act 2025. It's a really significant piece of legislation born out of the awful tragedy at the Manchester Arena back in 2017. The whole aim is to fundamentally change, really, how security and preparedness are handled at public venues right across the UK. And it's named, very importantly, in honor of Martyn, one of the victims whose memory has been such a huge part of driving this forward. To help us understand all the details, we have Daniel Hughes with us. He's a counterterrorism advisor with a lot of experience, formerly a security lead at the UK Home Office. A very warm welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's good to be here. This is definitely something important to discuss.
Absolutely, and thank you for watching Westferry Times. So let's dive right in. What is Martyn's Law actually trying to achieve? What are the main things it asks of venues, public spaces?
Well, essentially, Martyn's Law is a major shift in thinking. It takes protecting these public places from being, maybe just good practice to something that's legally required, an obligation. And it does this using a two-tier system. It's based on how many people a venue can hold. So you've got the standard tier. This is for places that hold between 100 and 799 people. For these venues, the main thing is getting a sort of basic level of security awareness sorted. That means doing simple risk assessments, figuring out where they might be vulnerable, and making sure staff get the right training to know what to do if, God forbid, something happens.
Okay, like spotting suspicious activity, knowing emergency steps.
Exactly that. Just the fundamentals, but making sure they're actually in place.
Right, a baseline for lots of different places. And then what about the bigger venues?
Okay, so for the enhanced tier that's anywhere holding 800 people or more, the requirements, well, they ramp up quite a bit. They have to create really detailed security plans. And these aren't just one-off. They need regular updates. And crucially, they have to run live scenario training exercises.
Live training, so actually simulating incidents.
Yes. It's not just about having a plan on paper. It's about pressure testing it, making sure staff really know how to react when things are chaotic. And another big thing for the enhanced tier, they must appoint a specific person, a designated security officer. That person's job is basically to oversee all of this, developing the plans, running the training, making sure it's all happening.
So that sounds like a much bigger commitment for those larger places, more resources, ongoing effort.
Definitely. It implies significant investment, not just upfront, but for continuous training, maybe even physical changes to the building. For you, the public, it probably means seeing more security staff, maybe slightly different ways of getting into venues.
Okay, so a clear difference based on size. And the absolute key thing here is that it's moving from just suggestions to actual legal duties, with consequences if you don't comply.
That's the core change, the legal enforceability. That's what really gives it teeth.
Now, this law is coming into effect in 2025, several years after the Manchester bombing. What took it, this long? Why now?
It's a fair question. I mean, there was pretty broad agreement across politics after the attack that something needed to be done about public venue security. But turning that agreement into actual law involved tackling some pretty complex legal and practical issues. There were debates about, exactly which places should be covered, how to make it fair for businesses of all sizes, small cafes versus huge stadiums, and figuring out how it would actually work on the ground across so many different types of venues.
Right, the practicalities must have been tricky.
They were, but I think a really decisive moment was the public inquiry into the bombing itself. The findings from that inquiry were stark. They really highlighted serious failings in the security that was in place at the time. And that created immense pressure, public pressure, political pressure for real, concrete changes. You couldn't ignore it after that.
So the inquiry really shone a light on the gaps. Was there anything else pushing it forward?
Oh, absolutely. You cannot overstate the impact of the victims' families, especially Fianna Murray, Martyn's mother. Her advocacy has just been relentless, incredibly powerful. She had campaigned tirelessly to make sure lessons were truly learned, that stronger protections were put in place. Her determination really kept this issue high on the agenda for policymakers. It wouldn't have happened without her, I don't think.
Her strength is just incredible. So all that effort has led to this law, which affects quite a wide range of places we all use. Where exactly will Martyn's Law apply?
It's got a very broad scope, yeah. It covers a whole spectrum of places where the public gathers. Think of the obvious ones, music venues, sports stadiums, but also exhibition centers, places of worship, shopping centers, even temporary events like festivals or big outdoor markets. Basically, anywhere the public can go that might be seen as a target because lots of people are there.
What about places that aren't specific venues, like, say, a busy train station concourse or a public square?
That's covered too, though slightly differently. Local authorities have a big role here. They'll be responsible for making sure security is considered in those kinds of public spaces, especially areas with lots of people passing through, like transport hubs. The direct rules might differ from a ticketed venue, but the need for planning is there.
And institutions like schools or hospitals, are they fully included under Martyn's Law?
It's a bit more nuanced there. Schools and hospitals often already have their own security regulations and standards they have to meet, but Martyn's Law does require them to coordinate their emergency planning with what are called local resilience forums.
Ah, so linking up their plans with the wider local emergency response.
Exactly. It's about making sure everyone's on the same page in a local area during a major incident, even if the specific tier requirements don't apply to a school in quite the same way they apply to a theater.
That makes sense, joining up the dots. Okay, let's talk practical impact. What's this going to mean for the venues day to day, for the people running events?
Well, it really depends on their size, linking back to those standard and enhanced tiers. For the smaller places, the standard tier ones, the main impact is probably going to be boosting staff awareness and basic training, making sure everyone knows how to spot something suspicious, who to tell, what the basic emergency actions are, that sort of thing.
So, upskilling the staff they already have, mostly.
Largely, yes, getting that foundational knowledge embedded.
And for the big venues, the enhanced tier.
Right, for them, it's a much heavier lift, as we touched on. They need those detailed, regularly reviewed security plans. That takes time and expertise. The live drills requirement is a big one, planning them, running them, learning from them. That's a serious logistical exercise. Plus, appointing dedicated security staff, that's an ongoing cost. And they also need solid plans for things like evacuation or lockdown, and good ways to share info quickly with the police. That might mean new systems or procedures.
It does sound like quite a resource commitment, especially for those larger operators. Is there any help available for them to meet these new rules?
Yes, the government has recognized that, particularly for maybe the medium-sized venues caught in the enhanced tier or smaller ones needing to up their game. The Home Office set up something called the Venue Resilience Fund.
Okay.
That's there to offer some financial help to eligible businesses for implementing these measures. And they've also launched an advisory hub, basically a source of guidance, best practice information to help venues understand what they need to do.
Good to know there's some support. But like any new law, especially one impacting businesses, I imagine there have been some criticisms or concerns raised.
Oh, definitely. You hear concerns, especially coming from sectors like hospitality and live entertainment. There's understandable worry about the extra costs involved, training, maybe new equipment, potentially needing more staff, and also the administrative side, the red tape, particularly when many of these businesses have had a tough few years economically already.
Yeah, the timing might feel difficult for some. Are there other types of concerns beyond the financial ones?
Yes, a couple of other areas have come up. Some questions have been asked about data privacy, how much information venues might need to share with authorities as part of this increased security focus. And you also have civil liberties groups raising points about, well, could this lead to a sort of normalization of more surveillance in public areas? Is the scope too broad?
The surveillance creep argument.
Right. But it is important to mention that the law does include clauses about proportionality. The idea is that the security measures should be reasonable and fitting for the specific risks and the type of venue. It's not meant to be a one-size-fits-all blanket approach that's overly intrusive.
We're trying to strike that balance between security and liberty, which is always tricky. Okay, so that's the view from businesses and civil liberties groups. What about the general public? How has Martyn's Law been received more widely?
Broadly speaking, the public reaction seems very positive. I saw a recent poll suggesting something like 72% of UK adults are in favor of the law. There seems to be a pretty strong feeling out there that this is, well, necessary, maybe even overdue, a sense that measures like these could actually make a difference in preventing attacks or at least lessening their impact.
A strong mandate from the public, then. And thinking back to the families, the people most directly impacted by Manchester, what's their perspective on the law finally coming into force?
It's complex, as you can imagine, deeply emotional. There's certainly, I think, a sense of relief that something concrete has been achieved after all their campaigning, that their calls haven't gone unheard. But that relief is, of course, mixed with just immense sadness and grief that never goes away. The law can't bring anyone back, but it's seen as a vital step forward, hopefully making future tragedies less likely. And it stands as a very powerful act of remembrance for those they lost.
Absolutely. A tribute, really. Looking ahead then, how do you see Martyn's Law changing things in the longer term? What's the future of venue security going to look like?
I think this could genuinely lead to a cultural shift, a big one. Think about fire safety. Decades ago, the regulations weren't what they are now. Today, fire drills, extinguishers, safety plans, they're just a standard, expected part of running any public building. Martyn's Law could do something similar for terror preparedness, make it just a normal, integrated part of how venues operate day to day.
So moving beyond just protection to overall readiness.
Exactly. The ultimate goal isn't just stopping attacks, though that's obviously paramount. It's about being ready, being resilient, ensuring that if the worst happens, the venue, the staff, everyone is better prepared to react, to manage the situation, to minimize harm.
Building that resilience across the board. Is this something other countries are looking at? Are we likely to see similar laws elsewhere?
There's definitely international interest, yes. Countries like Australia and Canada, for example, have been watching the UK's development of this law very closely. And in the US, while it's maybe more fragmented, there are discussions happening at the state level about bringing in similar requirements for public venues and events. So yes, it's entirely possible the UK's approach here could influence similar legislation in other parts of the world down the line.
It could set a precedent globally. Well, this has been incredibly helpful in understanding what Martyn's Law is all about. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today on the Deep Dive.
My pleasure. Happy to discuss it.
And thank you for watching Westferry Times. So, Martyn's Law, the Terrorism Protection of Premises Act 2025. It's clearly more than just rules on a page. It feels like it represents, well, resilience emerging from remembrance, learning from tragedy, adapting, and making a stronger commitment to keeping people safe. Maybe something for you to think about next time you're out at a concert, a match, or even just the shopping center, how this quiet shift in security might be shaping the spaces around us and our collective sense of safety. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. If you found it useful, please do subscribe and maybe share it with others who might be interested. From all of us here, stay safe, stay informed.